everyone. It is very nice to be back here. I hope you've all missed my pop culture references because they are coming. A couple years ago, Zach read this book called Breathe, A Lost Science of Art by James Nestor, which I'm confident only Kelsey in this room would be interested in remotely. It is like an ancient wisdom meets modern science. It's all about nasal breathing. Clearly, I didn't learn anything. It is why I've been mouth taping for the last 2 years, something I don't understand, but I've been told is helpful. But there's a whole section in this book about eating and the use of our jaw and how we as a society, because of our consumption of quick meals, bars, protein shakes, smoothies, etc., have started to weaken our ability to chew. And it's changed our facial structure. It's given us weaker chins. It's given us worse teeth, mouth structure, breathing capacity, etc. It goes on and on again. You can ask Zach if you want, and I think he would love to nerd out about it if you'd like to get into the details. But the point is, as a society, we have gotten worse at eating. We used to eat whole vegetables and, meat, and it revolved around chewing, and that got us stronger. And it took time, which meant that we were building out muscles. And now we go for a quick fix, which changes the way that we consume our food. And in fact, I remember at one point, for those of you that watched Chosen, I remember saying to Zach, why are their teeth so nice? Surely that isn't historically accurate. Like, they would have not had such straight teeth. I'm very distracted by how nice some of their teeth are. And Zach was like, no, actually, historically, that would have been very accurate because they had not done all the things to mess up their palate like us. They would have had nice teeth, which shocked me to think of Jesus with just this fresh grill looking good. But the point is, we have, like I said, weakened our ability to eat well. And in the same vein, we have also weakened our ability to read well, because we are so used to consuming quick words, things like social media captions and emails and memes and group texts, that we are never fully sitting with the word. In fact, I have some very depressing statistics for someone who used to be an English education major that I will share with you. 46% of adults did not read books in 2023 for pleasure. They either read none or did not read for pleasure. People's attention spans while looking at screens back in 2014 was about 2.5 minutes, and now it's 47 seconds in 2016. So this is an outdated stat. I can only imagine what it is now. Since 2003, we've had a 40% decline of just reading for fun. 40% less reading just because we enjoy it. And in a slight positive, a school in Kentucky did a complete book ban for a couple years, and what they found is year over year, the amount of books checked out in the library increased by 67% when there was no phone. This is startling and a little concerning for our attention span, but it's accurate. We see it all the time, right? Our ability to sit with even a long-form, interesting article to us is pretty low. And if that's happening for things that we are picking out regularly that are catered to us, then it is certainly happening when we're reading scripture. This new kind of fast-paced, clickbaity reading has rewired our brains and made it much harder for us to sit with scripture. So if you personally feel like it's hard for you to read, it's not just you, it's actually all of us. There's an article on Medium from a literary critic. It is his job to read and criticize books. And he was talking about the fact that he had been so distracted by other devices that he had only read 4 books that year. Again, this is his job. Someone pays him to do this. He had read 4 books, and he said books, in ways that are different than visual art, music, the radio, or even love, force us to walk through another's thoughts, one word at a time, over hours and days. We share our minds for that time with the writers. There is a slowness, a forced reflection required by the medium that is unique. Books recreate someone else's thoughts inside our own minds, and maybe it is this one-to-one mapping of someone else's words that give books their power. Books force us to let someone else's thoughts inhabit our minds completely. This is what scripture is intended to do, to let God's thoughts inhabit our minds completely. But the problem is, even if we really want to do that, we have rewired our brain to not do it. And we no longer have the skill to read scripture as it was designed to be read. And if you're thinking, Scripture was designed to be read a certain way? Question mark. The answer is yes, and very unfortunately for all of you, as I have aforementioned, I was at one point an English education major. LOL. Can you imagine? Can you imagine me in front of a bunch of kids? Lord, no. But it was what I originally intended to do, which means that you all are going to get a little English education. I'll take you back to Lit, where I'm sure you all want to be. Favorite subject of three of us, me and Savannah. Let's go. All right, let's do a little Bible work. So I'm going to read three passages. We're going to talk about a concept called canonical seams. We'll get into it. It sounds scarier than it is. Let's first look at Jesus and some of the scripture that Ashley read for us. This is in Luke 24. He said to them, "How foolish you are and slow to believe that all the prophets have spoken. Did not the Messiah have to suffer these things and then enter into his glory?" Beginning with Moses and the prophets, he explained to them what was said in all of scriptures concerning himself, which would have been the coolest podcast ever. Would love to have listened. But if we look at further on, verses 44 and 45, Jesus says, "Everything that must be fulfilled that is written about me in the law of Moses, the prophets, and the Psalms." Then he opened their minds so that he could understand the scriptures. And what I want to zero in on is what Jesus is calling the Bible. He does not call it the Bible. He calls it the law of Moses, the prophets, and the Psalms. This is a very common first century Hebrew way of referring to the Hebrew Bible, or what we now call the Old Testament. Three major divisions: the law, the first 5 books of Moses, Genesis through Deuteronomy, the prophets starting with Joshua, and then the Psalms, or the writings, because they involved other wisdom, literature, and a few other works. So this 3-part structure of the scripture is how in Jesus' day they were organized, and they were intended to be read a certain way. So let's look at 2 key passages in the law of prophets and the Psalms that biblical scholars, like I said, will call the canonical seams, meaning they are connected to one another, and they are transitions between 3 different sections of scripture. And again, unfortunately for you, I am going to educate you on something you did not want to know, but you now are going to have logged into your brain. In the world of SEO, search engine optimization, there is a little tag called a canonical tag. It is something that lives behind every website or every well-done website in the schema, which is the structured data. And it is just an indicator that tells Google what page to start with and then what falls beneath that when pages are similar. So it is just this little tiny piece of code that helps every search engine, ChatGPT, etc., understand which page is important, what comes next to it, and how do they connect. A canonical tag. In the same way, there are scriptures that are helping us thread through and understand the entire whole collection of the Bible the same way we would understand a website in its entirety. The ones that we're going to look at are Joshua 1 and Psalm 1. So let's look at Joshua 1 first. This is Joshua 1, verses 7 and 8. "Be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey all the law my servant Moses gave to you. Do not turn from it to the right or to the left, that you may be successful wherever you go. Keep this book of the law," this refers to Genesis through Deuteronomy, "always on your lips. Meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do everything written in it. Then you will be prosperous and successful." So notice that between the Torah and the prophets, there's a short passage in there telling us how to read it. We are to meditate day and night. Now let's look at Psalm 1. "Blessed is the one who does not walk in step with the wicked, or stand in the way that sinners take, or sit in the company of mockers, but whose delight is in the law of the Lord, and who meditates on his law day and night. That person is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in season, and whose leaf does not wither. Whatever they do prospers." So hopefully you guys caught it. The language is nearly identical. This is what our dude Tim Mackey at the Bible Project calls a hyperlink, where authors use a keyword or phrase. Do you see where I had to go down the SEO route? I apologize, everyone. This is just what I live in every day. But a keyword or phrase that deliberately connects one literary reference to another previous passage. It is a canonical seam, a through point, a link. And they are doing more than just connecting 2 different parts of Scripture. They are also telling us how to read it. The word that is used in both of those passages is meditation. In Hebrew, the word is hagah. Can you all say hagah? great, I'm confident I'm saying it correctly, and now you are all saying it like I am, which I'm sure is correct. It means to murmur. It means, or would have been used kind of like silently saying scripture out loud. It would have been common to do so. There was a practice of reading scripture in a quiet voice under your breath. This is why Joshua says, keep it always on your lips. It's a practice that they had. Now, neuroscientists will tell you this is incredibly helpful when you're trying to memorize anything, especially scripture. And it would have been encouraged to do this often in order to learn scripture and to be able to recite it. But Haggah can also be translated to growl over, the way a lion growls over its prey, or the way my dog George growls over any type of food, dangerous or not, because he thinks it's his to devour. Or like a dog if you give it a bone or anything exciting. In the same way with meditation, we are trying to do that with scripture. We Haggah, we chew on it, we pull the marrow out of it. I couldn't help but think that it's so funny that I ended up teaching on this and having this analogy in order to understand meditation with scripture, because as you guys all know, there was a nice season of my life where my face didn't work, just kind of, yeeted itself out of use. And during that season, I had to chew really slow, because if you take a bite that's too big, you close your mouth. But spoiler, if you can't use your mouth, everything just falls out. It's very cute. Thank you, Zach, for staying with me, despite all my flaws. And so at the time, I would have to chew a ton. I also couldn't taste very well. I also can't taste right now because I can't breathe. That's fine. Pray for me. But because of that, I had to chew a ton, like really slow, in order to get any flavor out of anything, and so that I wasn't constantly repulsing other people in public, because everything would fall out. And so I learned very quickly how much longer you take with food when you actually sit and chew it and aim to enjoy it, right? When you're not just scarfing or snacking and actually savoring. I also inadvertently lost a ton of weight, because it turns out when you're not eating all the time very quickly, you eat until you're full, and not all the time. Don't worry, I made it up later when I had twins. All that to say, Eugene Peterson has a very similar view of the way that we are intended to see scripture. He has a book appropriately titled Eat This Book, where he says, Christians feed on scripture. Holy scripture nurtures the holy community as food nurtures the human body. Christians don't simply learn or study or use scripture. We assimilate it, take it into our lives in such a way that it gets metabolized into acts of love. He specifically talks about Revelation 10, when John is handed the scroll and symbolically told to eat it, not read it, not just study it, eat it. Put it in your mouth, put away your journal and pen, pick up your knife and fork, meditate on this scripture. The canonical scene between Joshua 1 and Psalm 1 are telling us that scripture was designed to be meditated on. The Bible Project would call this Jewish meditation literature. I have a theory that there are two kinds of people in this world. We are going to test that theory right now. There are people who listen to music and say, I have no idea what the words were. I was just vibing. It was just music, didn't hear a thing, just liked it. How many of you fall in that category? Do not listen to lyrics. Yeah. Wow, the rest of you are brilliant. And then there's the right kind of person, in my opinion, that will look up lyrics, that want to know, what is the connective tissue here, that deeply studied the feud between Taking Back Sunday and Brand New back in the early 2000s so that we could understand who cheated on who wrote this first. More on that later if you want to hear my podcast on emo music and the scene back in the day. The point is, those of us that do so, sorry, Kelsey and Zach, we have an advantage when it comes to scripture, because like 60% of scripture is poetry, which means it has to be slowed down. Poetry, like art that does not give up its secret, begets us to slow down in order to understand it. Scripture is full of riddles and puzzles and phrases and contextual symbols that we are not going to know off the top of our heads. There are complex plot lines referring back and forth to one another. It does not quickly give up its meaning. It can be frustrating to read. Anyone ever been frustrated reading the Old Testament? Everyone, don't raise your hand. If you didn't, you're a liar. Or good for you. Or you're Caleb and understand like Hebrew and Greek and you can do it. Good for you. I can't. It takes a minute, and that is on purpose. Scripture does not want to be quick. It does not intend to be, even though some of us, and this is totally fine, get your scripture reading from the Lectio app or whatever it might be, day to day, it pops up on your app. That is totally fine. This is not me shaming you. I am a little. But that is not how Scripture is intended to be read all the time, right? It is intended to have much more time spent with it. But we have been formed by social media and quick, immediate need for satisfaction to read very fast, right? We have lost this art to really sit down and read. And Scripture itself is not even designed to be read the way we would read, say, a novel or a textbook that we need to consume, like on anatomy, which I know Ashley's really enjoying right now with her yoga training. It is meant to be prayerful, which means we have to slow down even more than we normally would. Bonhoeffer, the German Lutheran pastor, he defined meditation as the prayerful consideration of Scripture. And Dr. Richard Peace of Fuller Seminary, of course, we all know him, right, calls it contemplative Bible reading. I like both of those. It's a slow, prayerful, reflective mode of reading Scripture with the goal of formation, not just information. This is going to require us to retrain our brain quite a bit. Health experts, like the one in the book that Zach read, they say that we should savor each bite by chewing it at least 20 times before we swallow. It's supposed to be good for metabolism and nutrients and all the things, right? You try doing that with a singular Oreo, not going to happen, but if we did, we'd probably enjoy it a lot more. And in the same way, we are intended to chew on Scripture, not at a breakneck speed, but we take it very slowly so that we don't miss out on what God has for us. So the first step for most of us is going to be to actually slow down in order to meditate. And there's not like a silver bullet on how to do it, but as often we can learn from the 12th century monks, they did it pretty well. There is a helpful way that I think we've all heard Caleb preach on a few times, mention Lectio Divina. I don't know if I ever say that right. It's Latin. I don't speak Latin. I'm about to say like 15 words incorrectly, and again, you're all going to give me grace because I don't speak Latin. Lectio means reading. Divina means divine or spiritual. The meditative mode of reading is different from study. Study would ask, and we're going to get into study here in a few weeks, but study asks, what did this text mean to the original listener? What did it mean then? How do we apply it to our life now? But Lectio asks, how is God coming to me personally through this text? And I want to caveat, we are not manipulating Scripture here. We're not trying to allow the deceiver to manipulate Scripture. We're not looking for new meaning. We are asking what aspect of the original meaning is the Spirit wanting to directly impress in our own lives? How might it be applicable to me now as it was intended to for their hearts? This was first popularized by Saint Benedict all the way back in the 6th century. And then in the 12th century, it was actually codified into this 4-step process. Lectio, meditatio, orieto, and contemplatio, all the T's. And again, I'm confident I'm saying them correctly. In English, read, meditate, pray, contemplate. So first, we read Lectio slowly, mindfully, intuitively. Often that happens, we let a particular word or phrase kind of linger with us. We see it kind of catching our mind's attention, or maybe a picture comes into your mind. And in actuality, Jesus is coming to you as you read. He's speaking to you in some way. You guys may remember, I think it was last summer, we looked at like 60 different ways that you might encounter the word, depending on whether you're a left brain or right brain, whether you're creative or not. We could certainly revisit some of those. But as we read, things will come up naturally for us that the Spirit is showing us. Next, we're actually going to meditate on it. We chew on it. We're going to reread it a second, a third time, reflect on the connections between the passage and your life. We're going to think about what God might be saying to you. You may want to ask Jesus clarifying questions like, why this donkey be talking? Is that going to happen again? I'm interested. I have a lot of questions. You might enter into a dialogue with the Spirit of God. You want it to cut through bone and marrow, as the Scripture tells us it is wont to do. Then we're going to pray what we are hearing back to God, a two-way conversation. And finally, we're going to contemplate. So we're going to look up from the text to the eyes of God himself. And as we gaze upon him, gazing upon us in love. There was a monk, like I mentioned, in the 12th century named Guigo, who came up with these 4 steps. And for him, it was a very linear process. He actually described it like a ladder, right? You do one and then the next and the next. That works for him. It may not be the way that you experience it. It may be a little bit more circular. You may linger more in one stage than another. That's totally fine. The point here is, unlike other types of meditation, where the goal is to empty the mind, we are actually looking to fill our mind with the thoughts of God and let them shape and form us in who we are becoming, which is why this is part of our practice for this week. But just as a caveat, again, meditation is not the process. It is just a part of the process. It is just the beginning. There are many teachers that actually add a fifth step to that ladder, incarnatio, or incarnation, to take it and become flesh and blood, to translate the Bible into your life. Joshua says, be careful to obey all the law, meditate on it so that you may be careful to do everything written in it. We cannot just meditate on the Bible, as much as that would be lovely and soul-giving. We also have to get out of our head and out of our heart and actually be the hands and feet. The ancient rabbis used to teach that you learn the Torah with your feet more than your ears, meaning you actually learn through obedience, through doing and acting, engaging with it, loving others. In Psalm 119, King David compares God's words to honey in his mouth, but he also says this: I have more insight than all of my teachers, for I meditate on your statutes. I have more understanding than all the elders, for I obey your precepts. That may sound very arrogant, but what he's actually saying is, I know more than all the professors, all of the great minds, because I actually do what God says. And I love that. I think that this keeps us from becoming hyper-intellectual types of Christians and actual doers of the things that Jesus loved. I think this is the antithesis to becoming the kind of Christians that can quote scripture but have no idea how to live it out, who can understand the concept of the least of these but has never once interacted with them or loved them. I think this is the way that Eden becomes a church that loves the city of Charlotte fully and with physical and monetary and generous love and action, and not just lip service. The goal is to live out the library that we are learning. The goal is to use the food that we are given and turn it into energy and go out and do. I think that's so important. And if this feels like very heavy and, up here, I think it's really important to remember back in Psalm 1, what it actually says the ideal emotional posture towards scripture is delight. And I do not think that we talk about delight and joy enough. I think we do here at Eden. I think we try to do that a lot. But I don't know about you. I have always had this kind of Baptist Presbyterian beating into my skull that scripture is meant to be understood correctly and then repeated correctly to other people so that you get it right. You don't tarnish scripture. And there is goodness in that, but it also is completely devoid of the part of scripture that is meant for us to enjoy Jesus, who is the Word. And I don't want to lose that. So the next time Caroline or Kristen makes an incredible sourdough and we have the opportunity and blessing to enjoy it, I would encourage you guys to slow down and to savor it, to count to 30 or even 60 while you enjoy it. Let it be an actual experience. And I think in this, as we learn, we can also allow reading scripture to become the same. It's going to be difficult at first. It's going to feel tedious sometimes. Progress will be slow. We will feel unfocused. Our ADHD will win over every now and then, but I'm confident we'll come back. And as we retrain our brain to consume and to eat and to absorb scripture, I think there will be joy waiting for us on every page.